Welcome, I'm Michael Bickert. Thanks for joining me today as we explore concepts with the objective of improving your management skills and growing your business. Grab your notepads, grab your pen. As I always say, I want you to take notes. I want you to jot down some sort of action item that you can implement in your business today, because that's what this is about. Implementation to drive your business forward. I want to make you more effective as a manager, and effective managers implement. They're involved in action. So take down an action item. Today, I want to share with you a story. There was a management program, a general management program that I graduated from a number of years back. And in that, there was this effective exercise that the instructors had us engage in. And what they did was, the class had about 50, just over 50 people in it, and the instructors at the front of the room, they set up a table with a microphone, and they set up the audio system so that you could hear over the general audio for the whole classroom. And what they did was they had us mystery shop our own businesses. And so we would call in with a fabricated story about a customer situation. We'd pretend to be customers. So we didn't do it to our own stores. What we did was we would do it to one another's businesses. And so some other student in the class would get up on the microphone, volunteer, and contact somebody else's business. And what they did in advance, they teed us up. They said, what we're going to do is we are going to create a scenario in which we are an idealized customer. We're like the perfect customer, but we're also at the same time sort of a bit of a nightmare customer, in that we will have unreasonable demands, or we will try to place a great deal of demands outside of what the maybe typical scenario that your people face on a day-to-day basis. And what we guarantee you is we will be able to get your staff to send us to the competition. And we were incredulous. The rest of the student body was like, no, I don't think so. Not in my business. We value customers so much. There's no way we're sending you to our competition. We loathe the competition. Anyway, we did this, and we went through several iterations of it, and the scenario was the same every time. So someone would get up, we would dial the place of business, and whoever would answer, we would make sure that we were speaking to the right person or the right role that should be able to handle our problem. And we would say, we would start in introducing ourselves as the particular customer. And so in the case of my business, the scenario was that I was a doctor, or the person who called my place of business was a doctor, recently transferred to the city, and chose the hospital that he worked at. And we chose the most expensive real estate area of town that he just moved into, that was close to our place of business. And he started so saying these things, and he would say that he had some particular needs that needed to be looked after right away. And sure enough, the person would start quoting policy or the capacity constraints that they had or whatever, and the person at the place of business would say, I don't know that we'll be able to get around to it today. We could probably fit you in next week or something like this. And he'd say, no, I need to get this handled right away. And bottom line is, long story short, every time they said, well, you could try someone else. And okay, could you tell me, is there someone else that does this in the city? Oh, yes, well, and they would give the name of a competitor. Oh, would you mind giving me the contact information? We could even get the people from your business to look up the competition's contact information and share it with this customer who should be a great customer. And so it was really effective at demonstrating to us the inadequacies of our maybe onboarding, our training, and so on. And basically you start to wonder, how often is this happening? How many customers are we losing based on the inability of the person who's handling the situation to be audible ready and to be able to adapt according to the situation and make sure the customer feels welcome. We never want to be sending them to the competition, and yet time and again, as we went through this with various people's places of business, the same scenario occurred. And so I was relaying the story to someone, and the question was posed to me, how do we make sure this never happens in our business? You know, we are engaging, we're hiring somebody new who's going to be engaging with customers. How do we make sure that they are never susceptible to this scenario? And so I was asked to create a video for that. And so that's what we're doing today. How can you make sure that this never happens in your business? And let me tell you, if already you're writing this off and saying, well, that would never happen in my business, that's what we were. We were all incredulous, and yet they said it happens every single time. Now I want to reiterate, not only did they make themselves a great customer, and the purpose of making themselves a great customer, like a very wealthy customer and everything, was to prove that despite the fact that we're sending every indication to the place of business that we should be, you know, maybe we have the potential to be a VIP customer, they will still send us away. Even though those signals should be triggering something like, wow, we've got a live one, we've got a big fish on the line here, we need to reel this in, they will still cut bait, so to speak, and send us away. Now, the other part of that is we have to throw them curveballs. So in your business, if you're thinking about whether this will happen or not, is it happening in your business? It is, unless you know for sure because you're the only one. And if you are the only one engaging your customers, I'll bet you even you're doing it because you're not framing things through the proper perspective each and every time you engage with a new customer. We just don't do that. So let me answer the question that was posed to me. There were a number of questions posed to me by a manager who was considering this. And as I say, if we're bringing on somebody new within the business, how do we make sure that they never send our customers to the competition? And moreover, how do we make sure that they follow the ideal situation? So let's start at the beginning. The first thing you need to do is, to the greatest extent possible, try to match personality with the job and the role description the person has. So that comes down to really good talent acquisition and recruitment skills. Make sure you're not just hiring anybody. You got to make sure that you have clearly defined what it is the person is going to be doing. And in this example, they may be on the front lines, they may be answering phones, they may be receiving customers as they walk through the front doors, or they may be on, however your leads come in, however customers communicate with your business, we want to make sure that the person who's handling those leads, who is giving the customer service, is well matched for that. And the truth is, not everybody is. Some people have a very low tolerance, or they're really afraid of confrontation. So anything that feels confrontational, they break down right away and they crumble under the pressure. So make sure that you find the right role, the right personality for the role. So that's the first place I would start in advising somebody how to avoid this. The second one would be to make sure that you clarify your expectations of your people. That's one of your 4 obligations. And if you haven't guessed it, we're kind of going through the 4 obligations here. You as an employer have obligations to make sure that your business operates the way you want it to. And you have these 4 obligations to your business, to the other stakeholders, and to your people, and to yourself. So, we started by making sure we get the right talent in place, and then clarify your expectations. And part of that in this case would be explaining the scenario to the customer. Maybe share this anecdote. In fact, share this video. You can use this video with somebody and say, this is to help you to know what to do in these types of scenarios. This is part of clarifying your expectations. And a real important thing here is to explain the concept of the lifetime value of a customer. And that was one of the concepts they were trying to get across, the instructors were trying to get across in this course. And you may not know what the lifetime value of your customer is, but you need to try to figure that out. Now, if you've been around a long time, you should have data. You can go back and you can just do some simple math. You can add up, what is the amount of sales that your average customer represents, or take a sample of your customers, or if you're newer, take all of your customers and add up what is the what are their sales, and then divide by the number of customers to get the average sales. And what is your average profit per customer? So the lifetime value of a customer usually is expressed in sales. And of course, you can then extrapolate through, whatever your profit margin happens to be and get that in terms of profit. But take the time to do this. So that's your homework today, is calculate the lifetime value of a customer if you don't already know it. And then, keep that current, maybe once per year, update that, and then share that with your people. And so the lifetime value would be like, okay, if we caught this customer at the very beginning of their customer life cycle, saying that, if we're not dealing with infants or babies, now maybe you're in the business of selling, your target market are parents for their babies, but it's not the actual babies you're selling to. But there is a time when people get into the life cycle to become an ideal customer or in your demographic for your business. From that until, say, the time they no longer would be a customer, a prospective customer for your business, that's their lifetime. And then just figure out, well, how often do they reorder and that kind of thing. So, if the typical sale is $1,000 and they do that once per year, and we have on average our customers reorder from us for an average cycle of 10 years. In fact, I'm saying average here. What you want to do in terms of life cycle is you want to calculate the entire life cycle. Ideally, you would get somebody at the very beginning where they, if you were selling a car, maybe when they're 16 years old and they're first learning to drive, all the way until the, average age of people no longer drive, maybe 80 years old or something like that. And what if you sold them all the cars in between? You'd figure out, how many cars on average would they, or how many years would they drive a car for before they get another one? And what is the other forms of revenue we get from them, the accessories we sell them, as well as the servicing and so on, and what kind of repair work, and you just calculate all that stuff for your business, for your product, and then share that with your people and say, any customer, you never know who the customer that you're speaking with, to the extent that they're a stranger. Now, hopefully you do know many of your customers. You know them by name, you know them, identify them. And if you can do that, I've seen some businesses that are really good at identifying their customers. I'll tell that story later. But anyway, make sure that your people know that if you don't know who this customer is, you never know, especially in a scenario where they're telling you or you're getting feedback from them that lets you know they're a new customer. You want to make sure your people know that A, it's very difficult to conquest new customers. It's a very competitive market and people are fighting for these customers. And B, this customer could be worth a lot to our store, our business, whatever it is that you happen to be doing, and then share that average lifetime value of a customer. So let's just say, for example, the average lifetime customer that we deal with is worth $25,000, or it might be, if you sell bigger ticket items, it might be $250,000, or even measured in the millions. Whatever it is for your business, share that with them and say, this phone call, this face-to-face interaction, this text message, this chat that you're interacting with a customer may have $25,000 or $100,000, $250,000 on the line, and treat it accordingly. You see, we get so familiar with the day-to-day that we become a little bit numb and we don't treat every opportunity as we should. And so you got to communicate. This all comes down to the second thing, is clarifying your expectations. And part of your expectations in this case is making sure people know about the concept of the lifetime value, and that the default position that you expect of them, that you're clarifying, you expect that they treat all customers like with the proper respect to the concept of the lifetime value, that we have this much money at stake every time we interact with a customer. The next thing you have to do is you have to make sure that your people have the training, tools, and resources they need. So maybe you need to role play with them. And in the case of, the scenario, the anecdote I told at the beginning of this is, do they have access to a computer where they can look up information, scheduling information? What do they need to be able to meet the customer's needs or exceed the customer's needs at that point. You need to make sure, talk to your people as they're doing the job. What struggles do they come into? Make sure that they have those tools and resources that they need. And a big one here is empowerment. You need to empower your people. So write that down. Empower your people to be able to make the decision on the spot. They should not have to say, well, I don't know that we could do that, or they certainly should not be quoting policy to the customer. Now, you may have best practices. You may even, against my advice, have hard and fast rules and policies that you put in place. I would encourage you to tell your people, these are really best practices, and there's always exceptions to every rule. And so when you're dealing with a customer and the policy doesn't enable us to meet the needs that customer has, we need to bear in mind the lifetime value of that customer's potentially at stake here, and so try to find a way to accommodate him. And so that takes empowerment, and you have to let your people, you have to trust your people. You can later come back, and if they made poor decisions, you can come back and you can give them coaching, but at least you salvaged the customer, or you conquested that new customer. That's what this is all about. You want to conquest new customers and retain your existing customers. You want to understand what's at stake each and every time you're interacting with a customer. It starts with empowering your people. So think about, like, you might say to your, maybe you have a receptionist, you might have somebody who's in charge of handling customer support tickets on your chat, on your website, something like this. And you may say to them, hey, you can spend up to $500, or maybe it's up to $50, whatever your scenario is. Of course, depending on your business, your profit margins, and how valuable each and every customer are, like mathematically, to your business, you're probably going to want to scale that up. And so give your people the empowerment and say to them, hey, you have it within your power to spend X number of dollars to keep a customer happy. But it's more than just empowering them with the dollar figure. Empower them to keep the customer happy, and then empower them when we talk also about the making sure that they have the training tools and resources they need in order to meet or exceed your expectations that you've clarified for them. Then make sure they have some word tracks as part of that training. So you might teach them to say things like the following: Mr. Customer, I totally appreciate where you're coming from. We are going to look after you. We're going to make this right. We are going to get it handled. I guarantee you're going to be happy you dealt with us. These types of things, reassuring the customer, who may be a little demanding in the example I gave, or maybe asking for things that are outside the realm of what is normal from day to day for their own specific needs, for whatever the reason happens to be. Your people are empowered and trained with good word tracks to say, I know this, Mr. Customer, we're going to look after you. Your business is very valuable to us, so let's book you this appointment, let's get you in, and let's look after you. In my example, in this role play, this mystery shop scenario, this exercise that we did, we were making demands of things like trying to get scheduled in where they didn't have an opening, and trying to get extra, maybe there's a discount involved, this kind of thing. Just have your people reassure the customer, say, well, if there's something they're not sure that they can do, then they can say that as part of the word track. I'm not exactly sure what we can do in this scenario. I do know this, Mr. Customer. What I am sure of is we're going to make you happy. We're prepared to do more to get your business than any of our competition. And so let's go ahead and set this up, and let's get you looked after. And I'm going to go and research, and I'm going to come up with a solution for the problem. So what you're doing is you're training your people to pacify the customer, give him reassurances that they're very valuable, and be polite and professional, and really communicate that message. We want your business. Very friendly, upbeat, enthusiastic. Remember, we get the right people for the right job here. And then tell them to use a word track that says they're going to go and investigate and find out solutions. We're not exactly sure what we can do in this scenario, but we will do everything that within reason to make you happy here. And then what they can do is, capture the customer, so to speak. Get that customer's contact information, book the appointment, schedule the appointment, whatever it happens to be in your scenario. Capture the customer's intention to move forward, and then they can go and discuss with a manager. And that's another part of making sure that your people, that third obligation, making sure that your people have the resources, the training and the tools and the resources they need to do their job. That is part of that, is making sure they have access to management, having access to the decision maker, especially if there's something really out of the ordinary. So you can imagine the scenario. The person maybe gets off the phone in the example that I gave and goes into the manager's office or contacts the manager, however you operate, and explains, I've got this great new customer, potential new customer, new to town, guy must be wealthy, whatever the scenario is, but he needs to have this done and that done, and it has to be today and whatever. So I've got him coming in, I booked the appointment. What do you advise we do? Now, there's always alternative solutions to making a customer happy. I'm not going to go through another. I've got so many scenarios and anecdotes and observations that I've made over the years. The customer is not the person who will always come up with the solution. What they're trying to do, the customer, as we all are trying to do, we're acting in our own self-interest and we're trying to accomplish a particular objective. And so that customer maybe has to get to work, maybe has to get the kids to school, has some particular needs that are why he's making particular demands. And when you come up with an alternative solution that he hadn't thought of, like maybe a courtesy vehicle or something like that, then the idea I want to get across here is that don't expect your customers' demands that they're making, that they're married to those demands, that they're not flexible. They may be coming across that way in their initial communication, but when presented with another solution, an alternative that also accomplishes the objective that they have, they're likely to do it. Now, one of the things that we see here is that people are like fretting over how much money that this might cost. It might be like, well, if I had to give a courtesy vehicle to everyone, or if I had to bump everybody and reorganize the schedule every time a customer called in, we just couldn't do it. Our business would be terrible. That's the thing though. You're trying to manage by the exception, not the rule. When you think that, you're imagining worst case scenario. These scenarios come up infrequently. And what you want to do is make sure that you find a way. Now, if they're coming up all the time, if you just simply don't have the capacity to meet customers' demands on a very regular basis, that's a whole nother problem. We need to talk about that. We need to increase your capacities and change your business and remanage and figure out the logistics of how you execute your service, how you deliver on promises, and how you administer great value to your customers. If these things are really problematic all the time and you find your frontline people having to say no to customers frequently, you need to visit that and re-strategize with your team and collaborate for long-term plans. But really what we're talking about today these are infrequent. These are exceptions, and you should spend the money on the exception. You should spend the money and say, you may have a loss leader attitude. It's like, well, to conquest this customer, this particular thing that he's asking us to do, we're gonna make no money on this job. But we got a new customer, and it's the lifetime value of the customer that we are framing this, our perspective through. And we'll make money the next time, and we'll make money on repeat business and referral business from him, but we certainly aren't sending him away to the competition. We are not saying no. So we've talked about making sure you match people in the right roles, getting the right people with the right personality for the right job description. And we've talked about making sure you clarify your expectation and share with them the concept of the lifetime value of the customer, and that we never send customers to the competition. We empower them, we give them the tools, training, and resources that they need, including empowerment, including good word tracks. They understand we will find a way. If anyone can do it, we can do it. Think of these types of word tracks and sort of axioms of customer service that you will share with your people. And then lastly, you have to hold your people accountable. And what it comes down to is inspecting what you expect. So what we did in my anecdote at the beginning of this video, that was inspecting what we expect. We were mystery shopping, we were calling in, and what we expect our people to say in every scenario. The general managers who were in this course could say, I didn't expect them. I would expect they should know to do this and this. Now it's on us to make sure that our organizations behave and our people behave in the way we want them to. That's what inspecting what you expect is all about, and accountability. So to the extent that your people are doing what you want them to do, then you need to commend them. You need to reward them, celebrate their success, pat them on the back, and make sure they know that you've got an eye on it. And conversely, if they're not, then you find out why. We have a video on I think it's why people don't do what's expected of them. There's like 5 or 7 reasons that I go through in that video. Make sure you watch that. But depending on what the reason is, they may need more coaching, or they may not be the right person for the job. Whatever it happens to be, you need to hold them accountable. And you need to give them and coach them in a way that they will give you the more desirable behaviors that you're looking for. And part of this is also, this is a big one, write this one down, align your objectives. Make sure that your people who are interacting with your customers have the same goal as you. Your objective is to conquest as much business as possible and to retain every customer as to the greatest extent possible. You want to make sure that that's also the objective of the person that you hire for these roles. And how do you do that? Remember, aligning incentives often has to do with remuneration and the way you measure performance. So make sure that you are measuring these things. So it may be something, I'm not saying you have to pay people more every time your sales go up. That sort of commission bonus-based thing does work in many types of industries, but rather make sure that their prospects for raises and remuneration increases in the future, as well as advancement, extra responsibility, bonuses, perks, whatever it may be, are tied to measurements, to their report cards. So take a look at these things. These are how you align incentives, as you make sure that people know what's expected, and when they are giving you what you expect, they win from it. So you want, ask yourself in your business, when it's really, really busy, it's free, you've got, people are slammed, there's customers, the phones are ringing off the hook, people keep coming in, whatever the case may be, are your people delighted by that because they're like, oh, this is great, because it's a win for them as well? They should want what you want. Now, I acknowledge that even you as the business owner, you as the manager, you don't want to be stretched beyond your capacity. That's a different issue. But when it's slow, management is like, oh no, you're worried, and as a business owner, you've got so much at stake, you don't want it slow. You want your people thinking the same way you think. They don't want it to be slow. They want it to be busy. And when it is busy, they're excited because you have aligned your objectives with them. So think about how you're patting them on the back. Maybe you've got perks within your company. We've got a whole video on how to do this as well, so I won't go on that. But the key is you also have to align incentives, and that comes down to measurements. These are the various ways that you're going to make sure that nobody ever sends a customer to the competition. One other note, based on the person who asked me to elaborate on this concept, talked about the customer relationship management tool, the CRM tool. We have a whole video on that, and look at that. And it's really imperative to make sure, as you are clarifying your expectations of people, that they get good customer information in the CRM tool. So you have a minimum criteria. What is the minimum amount of information they need to enter in there? So in this example, they capture the customer's first and last name, customer's mobile number, maybe they have an alternative phone number to contact in the event that something was really urgent, you couldn't get them on the cell phone, an email address, these types of things. So whatever the minimum is. For your business, it varies. Maybe you need to have their actual mailing address and for shipping purposes and this kind of thing. But real key here is to teach them to take good notes. It's not just about the contact information for the CRM. You also want to put in notes. So in the example I gave at the beginning of the video, where we're talking about, oh, I'm a doctor, I'm new to town, I'm from Houston, I'm now working at this hospital, and we live in this area of town, or whatever. All those things should be either put directly while they're on the phone with the customer if they have that ability, or maybe they're jotting this down manually on a notepad, and then they enter it into the computer later. However your system works, I can let you work with that, but share that expectation. Those notes are imperative. And we did the following for this customer because he was new, because he had special demands or whatever. All of this stuff is very helpful down the road. So if this customer turns out to be unreasonable and is never going to be profitable, because every time he makes you jump through hoops that, you never make any money on that, the notes are in the CRM. You never want to start with that attitude though. You want to start with, no, this is the lifetime value of the customer is at stake here. We will do whatever it takes. And you really want to maintain that attitude all the time because, people are not unreasonable. If you watch this and you go, no, people are unreasonable, they will take advantage of you. That's because they're used to dealing with businesses that do things wrong. And they're used to being in a confrontational relationship with businesses. They think that they're adversaries with the business and that it's a competition to see what they can get. Once they start to understand that your business is delightful to deal with and that you're always going out of your way, they will come around. They will have more at stake than you do. They will rely on you more than you rely on them because they will realize there's lots of people champing at the bit to become your customers. There's a lineup of people who want to be your customers, and there aren't a number of businesses that can treat them as well as you do. Now, to the degree that your business doesn't treat customers that well, then they have lots of options for businesses that can treat them that well. Think about in your business, when you have a really loyal customer, that's because he knows how well you treat him, and he's got a lot vested in the relationship as well. So, I think that you want to be careful to always manage by the rule, not the exception. But those CRM notes that I was alluding to before I digressed there will help you to look back and take a look at a customer's history. There's the math. You want to look at how much the person has spent, because even an unreasonable customer sometimes is your most profitable customer. Maybe he's an outlier in terms of his demands, but he may be an outlier in terms of how profitable he is for you as well. So give consideration to that. We could go on for a long time about this. I'm glad that somebody asked me to elaborate on how to do this. I hope you will share this video with those people on your team that will benefit from it, especially the new people, and then tell them, hey, ask questions. Put the onus on them to clarify for you to clarify for you where more clarification for them is necessary. If they're not sure what the demands are or what they're empowered to do, make sure that they know that your door is always open. You want them to ask, and that you will happily give them what they need in terms of clarification as well as those tools. So that's where I want to leave it today. I hope you got something out of this, and if you did get something out of it, make sure you leave a comment, because when you leave a comment, the community reads and we learn from that, and we need to learn from one another. Perpetual refinement.